600 million years ago, Earth was a place we would scarcely recognize today. The continents scattered across the globe were barren wastelands of rock and dust. No grass covered the ground, no trees reached toward the sky. Not a single animal or insect crawled across the land. The wind howled over endless stretches of lifeless terrain, and rain fell on bare stone, carving rivers and valleys that would remain empty for millions of years to come. The oceans, however, told a different story entirely. Beneath the waves, life had already begun its long and patient experiment with existence. In the deep, quiet seas, strange and delicate creatures floated in the currents. They were soft-bodied, without bones, shells, or hard parts of any kind. Forms like Dickinsonia and Charnia lay flat against the seafloor, absorbing nutrients directly from the water or sediment around them. Others, resembling fronds or discs, anchored themselves lightly to the seabed, swaying gently with the tides that washed over them day after day. These organisms belonged to a world so primitive that the very concept of predator and prey barely existed. It was a time before jaws, before teeth, before armor of any sort. Survival meant existing in harmony with the surrounding environment, rather than battling against it. The atmosphere above was slowly changing, though not yet ready to support complex life on land. Oxygen levels were rising, thanks to photosynthetic microorganisms that had been quietly working for over 1 billion years. Vast colonies of cyanobacteria had produced enough oxygen to tip the balance, creating the potential for more energetic, more complex life forms to evolve in the ages ahead. But on land, the air remained harsh and unforgiving. The ultraviolet radiation from the sun, only partially blocked by the developing ozone layer, scorched the surface relentlessly. It was an empty, hostile place, waiting patiently for life to find a way to cross the boundary from sea to shore. The continents themselves were in constant motion, carried by the restless forces beneath the crust. Volcanic activity was common, shaping the landscape with eruptions and lava flows that painted the world in fire and ash. Mountains rose and were worn down by endless rains. Vast, shallow seas flooded low-lying areas, creating new habitats for marine life to explore and colonize. Earth was alive, not with forests and animals, but with the slow, grinding power of geology and the quiet persistence of early life. This ancient world was dominated by microbial mats, thin layers of bacteria and algae that coated rocks and seafloors like living carpets. In some places, they built structures called stromatolites, growing upward toward the sunlight in shallow waters. These structures, humble though they seemed, were monuments to resilience, the earliest architects of life on Earth. Alongside them, the larger Ediacaran organisms floated, crawled, and rested, each experimenting with new forms of existence, testing the boundaries of what life could be. It is hard to imagine the beauty of these ancient seas. Sunlight filtering through clear, warm waters revealed a garden of ghostly forms, their bodies translucent and soft, like living shadows drifting in an endless dream. Currents drifted lazily across the seabed, carrying particles of food and oxygen to the waiting creatures below. There were no eyes yet to see, no nervous systems complex enough to understand the world around them. But life was beginning to shape its surroundings, carving out niches and testing the limits of possibility with every generation. This era, known as the Ediacaran period, lasted for tens of millions of years. It was a time of quiet innovation, a slow build-up to something extraordinary that was waiting just beyond the horizon. Many of the creatures of this time would leave no descendants, their strange body plans disappearing forever into the fossil record. Others, perhaps, would lay the groundwork for future animals, though the path forward was anything but certain or straightforward. Evolution was a chaotic artist, experimenting with shapes, sizes, and ways of living, most of which would end in dead ends. The Ediacaran world was not a paradise. Environmental stresses could still strike without warning. Ice ages came and went, covering much of the planet in glaciers and then retreating, leaving behind a churned and battered landscape. Volcanic eruptions poisoned the seas and the skies with ash and toxic gases. Yet through it all, life endured, clinging stubbornly to existence. Each challenge forced new adaptations, and each extinction cleared the way for something new to emerge from the ruins. By the end of the Ediacaran, around 541 million years ago, the stage was set for one of the most dramatic events in the history of life on Earth. The quiet, ghostly creatures of the Ediacaran seas would soon be replaced by a riot of color, movement, and complexity that would forever change the face of the planet. Predators would rise from the depths, shells would appear to protect vulnerable bodies, eyes would open to see the world for the first time, and Earth would never be the same again. But for those long eons, in a world without forests, without birds, without dinosaurs or mammals, life's story was written in the language of patience, resilience, and silent transformation. This was the beginning of everything we know today, the first chapter of a journey that would stretch across hundreds of millions of years, leading eventually to the vibrant, teeming world we call home. The foundations were being laid, stone by stone, gene by gene, for all the wonders that would follow. The Cambrian period dawned with a transformation so profound that it would echo through every living thing that would ever exist. For the first time, life leapt into complexity, with a ferocity and speed that had never been seen before. The oceans, once home only to soft-bodied forms drifting in gentle currents, exploded into a chaos of new creatures, each equipped with strange and powerful adaptations that allowed them to thrive in ways their ancestors never could. Earth's seas were now teeming with activity unlike anything that had come before. Trilobites, armored and segmented, scurried across the ocean floor like miniature tanks, their exoskeletons glinting in the filtered sunlight that penetrated the depths. Some were hunters, prowling the seafloor for prey. Others scavenged or sifted through sediments for scraps of food, living lives of quiet persistence in the shadow of greater predators. Above them, nimble, worm-like predators called anomalocaris glided through the water with undulating grace, their flexible bodies and large grasping appendages designed for seizing prey with terrifying efficiency. Compound eyes, sharper than anything that had existed before, gave them a deadly advantage. Anomalocaris was one of the earliest superpredators, changing the very nature of life in the oceans and setting the stage for millions of years of evolutionary arms races. This was the birth of ecosystems built on conflict and competition. For the first time, creatures needed defenses against attack. Shells, spines, and hardened body parts evolved to protect against predators that now roamed the seas with deadly intent. Mobility became an advantage, allowing prey to escape and predators to pursue. Eyes appeared in various forms, from simple light-detecting patches to complex compound structures that could spot both prey and danger from remarkable distances. Creatures like Opabinia, with its 5 stalked eyes and bizarre proboscis, seemed like visions from a fever dream, yet each was a masterpiece of evolutionary innovation. The diversity of body plans during this time was staggering, with nature experimenting wildly with different configurations and survival strategies. Many of these experiments would fail, leaving no trace except fossils buried deep in ancient rock layers. Beneath the shallow seas, reefs formed from the calcium carbonate structures built by early sponges and other reef-building organisms. The seabed became a crowded neighborhood of burrowers, grazers, hunters, and scavengers, each carving out their own ecological niche. Creatures carved out territories, competed fiercely for resources, and adapted to a world that was suddenly more dangerous, dynamic, and dazzlingly diverse than it had ever been before. This explosion of life did not happen overnight. It built slowly over millions of years, but in geological terms, it was a blink of an eye, a moment of unprecedented evolutionary acceleration. The fossil record from the Cambrian reveals a sudden and dramatic increase in both the diversity and complexity of life forms. Almost every major group of animals that exists today had their origins during this remarkable period. Arthropods, mollusks, annelids, echinoderms, and early chordates all traced their roots back to the Cambrian seas. The Earth itself supported this flourishing of life in ways both subtle and profound. Oxygen levels continued to rise, reaching a threshold that allowed for larger, more active animals with higher metabolic demands. Shallow seas covered vast portions of the continents, providing warm, nutrient-rich environments ideal for sustaining complex ecosystems. Tectonic activity shifted the continents slowly but inexorably, creating new coastlines, new habitats, and opportunities for isolation and innovation that drove evolution forward. Among the most remarkable of the Cambrian creatures were the early chordates, ancestors of all vertebrates including ourselves. Small, simple fish-like animals with a notochord, a flexible rod running down their bodies, began to swim through the oceans. They lacked bones or jaws, but represented the first steps toward the evolution of animals like fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. In these humble creatures lay the seeds of our own distant ancestry. The Cambrian explosion also introduced the concept of extinction on a grander scale than before. As competition intensified, many lineages that had once thrived began to vanish, unable to compete with more efficient or better adapted forms. Natural selection was now a relentless force, favoring the quick, the clever, the well-armored, and the adaptable. Life was no longer about simply surviving. It was about competing, succeeding, and sometimes failing in spectacular fashion. This new dynamic world set the blueprint for every ecosystem that would follow. Food chains became complex webs of interconnection. Energy flowed through communities in ways that mirrored the intricate systems we see in modern forests, coral reefs, and savannas. Life became interconnected in profound ways, and the fate of one species could influence countless others in cascading effects that rippled through entire ecosystems. The Cambrian oceans would have been a breathtaking sight to behold. Coral-like sponges painted the seafloor in soft hues of purple, orange, and green. Fields of worm burrows and trilobite tracks crisscrossed the sediments like ancient highways. Jellyfish-like creatures pulsed through the upper waters, while predators like Anomalocaris patrolled the depths with quiet, lethal grace. It was a world alien and familiar all at once, a world where the fundamental rules of life as we know it were being written for the very first time. By the end of the Cambrian, around 485 million years ago, many of the great players of this early drama had either gone extinct or evolved into new forms that would dominate the next chapter of Earth's story. The stage was set for further expansion, greater complexity, and inevitably, new disasters that would test life's resilience once again. Life had made its grand entrance onto the world stage, but its journey was only just beginning. In the silent ebb and flow of Cambrian tides, the seeds of future empires were sown. Every bird that would ever soar through ancient skies, every fish that would ever swim through primordial seas, every mammal that would ever walk the earth, all of them could trace their lineage back to these ancient oceans where, for the first time, life dreamed bigger, moved faster, fought harder, and dared to imagine a world beyond the simple existence of its ancestors. After the drama of the Cambrian explosion, life continued its relentless advance into the unknown. The Ordovician period began, and with it, the oceans grew richer, deeper, and more vibrant than ever before. It was a time when life built upon the foundations laid during the Cambrian, reaching new heights of diversity and complexity that would have seemed impossible in earlier ages. The seas dominated the world, covering vast stretches of the continents under shallow, warm waters, turning the Earth into a planet of shimmering blue. Beneath these ancient waves, coral reefs began to take form for the first time. The first true coral builders, primitive rugose and tabulate corals, anchored themselves to rocky outcrops and shallow seafloors with determination. Over generations, their hard calcium carbonate skeletons grew and layered upon each other, creating complex living structures that provided shelter, food, and breeding grounds for countless marine organisms. These early reefs were smaller and simpler than the massive coral systems of today, but they represented a critical leap forward in the organization of marine life. For the first time, ecosystems had permanent three-dimensional architecture, creating vertical habitats that multiplied the available living space. In the spaces between the coral structures, brachiopods, mollusks, trilobites, and crinoids thrived in abundance. The ocean floor bustled with life in ways that would have been unimaginable during the Ediacaran. Trilobites continued to dominate the sediments, now accompanied by armored relatives who developed spiny defenses against the growing threat of predation. Slow-moving gastropods grazed on algae that coated the rocks and coral, while filter feeders like bryozoans and graptolites extended delicate arms into the currents to capture microscopic food particles drifting past. The Ordovician seas were a world of contrasts, a place where the slow and the swift, the armored and the soft, the hunter and the hunted, all found ways to coexist in an intricate web of relationships. One of the most remarkable innovations of this period was the rise of the first jawless vertebrates, the early fish that would eventually give rise to all other vertebrate life. These ancient pioneers, called ostracoderms, swam cautiously through the seas, their bodies covered in protective armor plates that shielded them from predators. They had no jaws, relying instead on small, circular mouths to filter food from the water or suck up organic material from the seafloor. Though simple compared to modern fish, these creatures marked a turning point in Earth's history. The age of vertebrates had truly begun. Fish were not the only predators to patrol the Ordovician oceans. Giant squid-like creatures called orthocones floated through the waters, their long, conical shells providing both buoyancy and defense against attack. Some grew to lengths of several meters, making them the largest animals on Earth at the time. With powerful tentacles and keen senses, they hunted smaller trilobites, mollusks, and early fish, casting long shadows across the reef landscapes below as they moved with silent purpose. Meanwhile, life continued to innovate in countless other directions, experimenting with new forms and strategies. Early starfish crept across the seabed, their simple radial bodies hinting at the future splendor of echinoderms. Primitive plants began to appear along the coastal margins, tiny moss-like forms that clung to rocks exposed during low tides. Though barely noticeable against the backdrop of the ocean's grandeur, these early land plants would one day transform the face of the Earth entirely. Above the waves, the continents were largely barren and lifeless. No trees, no grass, no insects filled the air with sound or movement. The land remained a vast desert of rock and sand, shaped by wind and rain alone, waiting for life to claim it. Yet the presence of plants along the shores hinted at the coming invasion of life onto the land. The march toward terrestrial dominance had begun, slowly, hesitantly, but inevitably, driven by the relentless pressure of evolution. The Ordovician was also a time of shifting climates and moving continents. Tectonic forces continued their endless reshaping of the planet, bringing together land masses and opening new oceans in a slow geological dance. Volcanic activity spewed gases into the atmosphere, influencing weather patterns and ocean chemistry in ways both subtle and profound. These changes created new environments for life to exploit, but also set the stage for one of Earth's first great disasters. Toward the end of the Ordovician, the planet plunged into a sudden and severe ice age. Massive glaciers formed over the southern supercontinent of Gondwana, locking away vast amounts of water and ice and causing sea levels to fall dramatically. Shallow seas that had teemed with life dried up, and the rich coastal ecosystems that had flourished for millions of years collapsed almost overnight. Many marine species, finely tuned to stable, warm environments, could not survive the rapid changes. The result was a mass extinction event, one of the first major ones in Earth's history, wiping out an estimated 85% of all marine species. Entire families of trilobites vanished forever. Reef systems crumbled. The once thriving seafloors became graveyards of empty shells and silent stone. It was a catastrophe that reshaped the living world, creating opportunities for new forms to rise from the ashes of the old. Yet even in the face of catastrophe, life endured with remarkable resilience. The survivors of the Ordovician mass extinction would go on to repopulate the oceans, adapted to the new, colder world that emerged from the ice. The reef builders would return, stronger and more diverse than before. Fish would continue their evolutionary journey toward dominance, developing new adaptations and filling new niches. And life would once again find ways to flourish in the ever-changing theater of existence. The Ordovician period, with its rich seas and early reefs, was a critical chapter in the story of Earth. It was a time when ecosystems grew more interconnected and complex, when vertebrates began their long rise to prominence, and when the first tentative steps toward life on land were taken by brave pioneers. It was a world of brilliant color and intricate patterns, of triumphs and disasters, of beginnings and endings that would echo through the ages. The foundations laid during these ancient days would resonate through time, shaping the future of life in ways that would not be fully realized for hundreds of millions of years. Under the ancient Ordovician sun, amid the glimmering reefs and dark waters teeming with strange life, the story of Earth continued to unfold. Written in stone and shell and bone, a testament to life's ability to adapt, survive, and ultimately thrive against all odds. After the devastating mass extinction at the end of the Ordovician, the Earth entered a time of renewal and recovery. The Silurian period began, and life seized the opportunity to rebound, diversify, and venture into entirely new territories with renewed vigor. This was an age of recovery and quiet revolution, when creatures both great and small began to explore realms they had never touched before, pushing the boundaries of what was possible. The seas once again filled with vibrant life, creating bustling metropolises of activity beneath the waves. Trilobites, though diminished in variety after the extinction, continued to scuttle across the seafloor, their segmented bodies leaving trails in the soft sediment. Brachiopods and crinoids swayed with the gentle currents, filtering food from the water with elegant efficiency. New forms of mollusks evolved, some with tightly coiled shells that protected them from the predators that prowled the ancient seas. But it was the rise of the jawed fish that truly marked the Silurian as a turning point in evolutionary history. Armored jawless fish like the ostracoderms still populated the seas, but they now shared their domain with the first fish capable of biting, grasping, and tearing flesh. These early jawed fish, known as placoderms and acanthodians, opened a new chapter in the evolutionary story of vertebrates. With jaws, creatures could exploit a wider range of food sources, from hard-shelled prey to larger, more elusive animals. Predation pressures pushed prey species to evolve new defenses in response. Thicker shells appeared, better camouflage developed, faster swimming speeds evolved. The arms race between predator and prey accelerated, driving innovation in both camps. Tiny plankton bloomed in vast numbers, forming the base of food chains that supported increasingly sophisticated marine communities. The ancient seas thrummed with life, with creatures hunting, fleeing, feeding, and dying in an endless dance of survival. While the oceans continued to evolve and diversify, something even more remarkable was happening along the quiet, rocky shores of the continents. Life, which had been confined almost entirely to the seas for billions of years, was beginning to set its sights on the land with growing determination. The very first vascular plants, equipped with internal systems for transporting water and nutrients, began to colonize the damp margins of continents. Simple moss-like plants had edged onto the land earlier, but these new pioneers were fundamentally different. They could grow taller and sturdier, spreading farther from the water's edge than any plant before them. Species like Cooksonia, standing only a few centimeters tall, were among the first to establish themselves on land. Their simple branching stems and primitive root systems marked the beginning of a transformation that would eventually cover the continents in green. Alongside these pioneering plants, the first land animals began to emerge from the seas. Tiny arthropods, ancestors of modern insects and spiders, ventured onto the shores, feeding on the primitive plants and detritus that accumulated along the water's edge. These early colonizers were small and vulnerable, but they represented the vanguard of a great migration that would eventually populate the land with an incredible diversity of life. The Silurian world was a planet in transition, caught between the ancient dominance of the seas and the emerging promise of the land. The continents were still moving, driven by the relentless forces of plate tectonics. New mountain ranges rose as land masses collided, their peaks scraping the sky. Old mountain ranges eroded, their sediments washing into the seas and creating new coastal habitats. Volcanic activity pulsed along the ocean floors, releasing minerals and nutrients that enriched the waters. Storms raged across the seas, carving new channels and stirring nutrient-rich waters from the depths. Tides swept over coastal flats, feeding the plants and creatures that clung to the margins between water and land. It was a dynamic, evolving world, with every shoreline, every reef, and every tidal pool offering new opportunities and new dangers for the organisms that inhabited them. The Silurian was a quieter period compared to the explosive dramas of the Cambrian and the catastrophic endings of the Ordovician, but its impacts were no less profound. It set the stage for the greening of the earth, the conquest of land by animals, and the refinement of predatory strategies that would define the next great eras of life. It was an age of preparation and promise, when nature experimented with new forms and laid down the blueprints for the vast ecosystems yet to come. The creatures of the Silurian seas, the plants clinging to rocky shores, and the tiny arthropods braving the open air, all were the architects of a future they could never imagine. Their small, tentative steps were the first movements in a grand symphony that would one day cover the earth in forests, populated with dinosaurs and mammals, and ultimately give rise to humanity itself. In the Silurian sun, shining over green shores and glittering seas, life found new ways to dream, to explore, and to conquer the unknown. It was a time of rebirth and quiet revolution, when the first fragile roots of the modern world took hold in ancient stone. The stage was being set, piece by piece, for the dramatic transformations that would follow in the ages to come. Life was learning to breathe air, to stand against gravity, and to survive in a world that had once seemed impossibly hostile to anything that crawled from the seas. The Devonian period arrived with a flourish of innovation and expansion. This was an age that would witness an explosion of aquatic life unlike anything the planet had ever seen. The oceans teemed with an incredible diversity of fish, earning the Devonian its nickname as the Age of Fishes. Armored placoderms grew to enormous sizes, some like Dunkleosteus reaching lengths of 10 meters, their massive jaws capable of crushing almost anything in their path. Sharks began their long evolutionary journey, sleek and efficient predators that would survive virtually unchanged for hundreds of millions of years. Bony fish diversified into countless forms, filling every available niche in the marine environment. Some hunted in open water, others lurked in the shadows of reefs, and still others burrowed in the seafloor, each adapting to its own unique way of life in the crowded seas. But the greatest revolution of the Devonian was not happening underwater. It was unfolding quietly along the tangled margins of rivers, lakes, and swampy lowlands. Here, the first forests were rising, transforming the barren landscapes of previous eras into something entirely new. Towering plants like cladoxylopsids and early lycophytes stretched toward the sun, their primitive roots gripping the soil with growing strength, their leaves simple and needle-like, capturing sunlight and fueling a new wave of terrestrial life. These forests transformed the landscape in profound ways. They stabilized soils, preventing erosion and allowing deeper, richer earth to develop. They altered the atmosphere itself, drawing down carbon dioxide through photosynthesis and releasing oxygen, cooling the planet and setting in motion profound changes in climate. With forests came more complex soils, richer ecosystems, and the birth of freshwater habitats, brimming with opportunity for colonization. Alongside the roots and trunks of these primeval forests, the first terrestrial animals ventured forth with growing confidence. Primitive arthropods, including centipedes, scorpions, and early insects, colonized the leaf litter and damp undergrowth. Breathing air through primitive respiratory systems, finding shelter among the plants, they began to weave the first fragile terrestrial food webs. Life was no longer merely clinging to the edges of the land. It was beginning to thrive there, establishing permanent populations that would never return to the seas. Then came a moment that would echo through all of Earth's future, a pivotal transition that would change everything. A lineage of lobe-finned fish began to adapt to shallow, oxygen-poor waters, where traditional gills struggled to extract enough oxygen for survival. Their strong, fleshy fins evolved into proto-limbs capable of pushing against the mud and propelling their bodies into new environments. Primitive lungs supplemented their gills, allowing them to gulp air above the water's surface and survive in conditions that would kill other fish. These early pioneers, creatures like Tiktaalik, were not yet fully terrestrial, but they were taking the crucial first steps toward walking on land. It was a slow, uncertain journey, fraught with challenges. Water offered support for their bodies, protection from desiccation, and abundant food. Land, by contrast, was fraught with danger and the constant threat of drying out. Yet the advantages were undeniable and too tempting to ignore. Untouched plants offered food without competition. Shallow pools provided refuge from aquatic predators that could not follow. And the open land, largely empty of vertebrate competitors, was a frontier, waiting to be conquered by those brave enough to make the transition. The evolutionary pressure was immense, and over millions of years these fish-like creatures slowly transformed into the first amphibians. The Devonian world, though filled with vitality and innovation, was not without its perils. Near the end of the period, a series of extinction events struck with devastating force, wiping out many marine species in waves of death. The causes were complex and interconnected, a combination of climate change, falling oxygen levels in the oceans, and possibly massive volcanic activity that poisoned the atmosphere and seas with toxic gases and ash. Reef systems collapsed, their intricate structures crumbling into rubble. Many placoderms vanished forever, their armored bodies no match for the changing conditions. Trilobites, already diminished from their Cambrian heyday, suffered further losses. Yet even in the face of destruction, evolution found a way forward. The survivors carried the seeds of future innovation, adapting to the new conditions, and eventually flourishing once again. Tectonic forces continued to reshape the continents during this time. Euramerica, a vast supercontinent, formed near the equator as smaller landmasses collided and fused together. Gondwana loomed to the south, a massive continent that would one day break apart to form South America, Africa, Antarctica, Australia, and India. Mountain ranges rose as continents collided and eroded as wind and water wore them down over millions of years. Their sediments were carried by ancient rivers into newly forming seas, creating ever-shifting habitats that drove the evolution of life forward. Shallow inland seas advanced and retreated with changing climates and sea levels, creating ever-shifting habitats along their margins. Storms swept across the coasts, carving cliffs and beaches with relentless force. The winds whispered through the ancient forests, scattering spores and dust across the continents. Lightning flashed over swamps teeming with insects and early amphibians. And in quiet, still ponds, fish-like creatures such as Ichthyostega and Acanthostega tested the limits of their developing limbs. Every new adaptation, every small triumph in the struggle for survival, brought life closer to a momentous future. The Devonian was a bridge between two worlds, the familiar watery cradle of life and the uncharted promise of dry land. It was a time when fins became legs, when gills were supplemented by lungs, and when vertebrates first looked beyond the boundaries of their ancient home toward the vast opportunities that awaited on land. These early landwalkers could not have known it, but they were the ancestors of every reptile, bird, mammal, and human who would one day walk the earth. Their cautious ventures onto the muddy shores were the first steps of an epic odyssey that would reshape the face of the planet. Beneath the ancient sun, over a world of towering forests and teeming seas, life pushed onward with relentless determination. The Devonian period was a testament to evolution's relentless drive to explore every possible path, to fill every niche, and to survive against every challenge. It was an age of bold experiments, of breathtaking triumphs and devastating losses, a chapter that set the stage for the vibrant, complex world that was still to come. And in the silent shadows of those ancient forests, where strange insects crawled and the first amphibians stirred, the story of life on land truly began in earnest. The Carboniferous period opened a new chapter in Earth's story, one unlike anything that had come before. The continents were lush and green, cloaked in dense, sprawling forests that stretched across low-lying equatorial regions. Towering trees, giant ferns, and strange, spore-bearing plants dominated the land, weaving an endless, humid canopy under a heavy, oxygen-rich atmosphere. It was a world of giants, where both plants and animals grew to sizes that would seem impossible in later ages. Insects and arthropods grew to monstrous proportions in the thick, oxygen-saturated air. Dragonflies with wingspans wider than an eagle's soared above the forests, their translucent wings shimmering in the filtered sunlight that penetrated the dense canopy. Millipedes the size of cars crawled slowly over the damp forest floors, feeding on decaying plant matter and leaving deep tracks in the soft earth. The air was alive with the hum of countless wings, the clicking of countless legs, and the creaking of ancient trees swaying in the warm breezes. Beneath this towering green world, vast swampy wetlands stretched across the continents like endless seas of vegetation. The waters were choked with tangled vegetation, thick mats of floating plants, and the decaying remains of countless generations of life. Layer upon layer of dead plant material built up over millions of years, compressing under its own weight, forming the future seams of coal that humanity would one day uncover and burn. It was in these endless wetlands that the Carboniferous earned its name, coal-bearing, a monument to the incredible abundance of life. The first true forests were not just a backdrop to life. They were engines of change that transformed the planet. They pumped oxygen into the atmosphere at unprecedented rates, with some estimates suggesting oxygen levels climbed as high as 35%, far greater than today's 21%. This oxygen-rich atmosphere allowed insects and other arthropods to grow to enormous sizes, unconstrained by the limitations that keep modern insects small. Fires swept across the landscape with terrifying speed and intensity, ignited by lightning and fueled by the dry, resinous plants that covered the land. The high oxygen content made fires burn hotter and faster than anything we see today. Yet even as they burned, life rebounded with remarkable resilience. The forests regrew with relentless determination, seeds sprouting from the ashes and quickly reclaiming the scorched earth. Deep within these forests, vertebrates too were finding their place in this new world. Amphibians, descendants of Devonian pioneers like Tiktaalik, flourished in the damp environments. They ranged from small frog-like creatures that lived in the undergrowth to massive salamander-like predators that dominated the waterways. Some reached lengths of over 2 meters, lurking silently in the stagnant waters, ready to strike at anything that wandered too close to the water's edge. But even greater changes were stirring beneath the surface of this amphibian-dominated world. The first true reptiles emerged during this time, animals that broke free from the chains that bound amphibians to water. Unlike their amphibian ancestors, these new reptiles laid their eggs on land, their tough, leathery shells protecting the developing young from drying out. It was a revolutionary adaptation, one that would forever change the destiny of life on Earth. The reptiles' dry, scaly skin sealed in moisture, allowing them to venture deeper into the forests and drier regions that amphibians could not survive. They could live their entire lives away from standing water, freed from the need to return to ponds or streams to reproduce. This independence opened up vast new territories for colonization and set the stage for the age of reptiles that would follow. In the skies, insects dominated completely, filling every available niche with remarkable diversity. Early ancestors of modern cockroaches scuttled through the undergrowth, virtually unchanged from forms that still exist today. Giant predatory griffinflies ruled the air, preying on smaller insects with precision and speed, their enormous eyes tracking movement with deadly accuracy. Spiders spun their first intricate webs between the trees, and scorpions crept silently along the damp forest floors, hunting in the shadows. Beneath the continents, tectonic forces continued their slow, inexorable dance. The great landmasses of Euramerica and Gondwana began to drift toward each other, setting the stage for the eventual collision that would birth the mighty supercontinent of Pangaea. Towering mountain ranges rose along the collision zones, their peaks weathering into sediments that fed the ever-growing coal swamps in the lowlands. The Carboniferous world was a planet in transition, a place where new forms of life were experimenting with independence from water, where forests reshaped the very chemistry of the atmosphere, and where insects grew to astonishing sizes under the heavy, oxygen-laden skies. Life was pushing into every corner of the land, adapting to every possible environment, and creating ecosystems of unprecedented complexity. Yet, as with every golden age in Earth's history, it would not last forever. By the end of the period, the climate began to shift dramatically. The vast, steamy swamps that had once covered much of the land started to dry out as glaciers expanded across the southern supercontinent of Gondwana. Sea levels fell, isolating the wetlands and causing many to wither away. The great coal forests fragmented and shrank, and with them, many of the towering plants and giant arthropods began to disappear. The reptiles, however, would thrive in these changing conditions. Their adaptations for dry conditions allowed them to endure where amphibians struggled. As the swamps died, these early reptiles spread out, diversifying into new forms and claiming the abandoned niches left behind by declining amphibian populations. The stage was being set for the next great chapter in life's story. The Carboniferous period was a moment of extraordinary innovation and abundance, a time when the earth was blanketed in green and the air itself was thick with life. It was a world where dragonflies the size of hawks hunted over vast forests, where amphibians ruled the waterways with unchallenged dominance, and where the first reptiles quietly prepared for an age that would soon belong to them. Beneath the heavy skies, across endless emerald landscapes, life flourished, evolved, and pushed forward into an uncertain but promising future. The legacy of the Carboniferous would be written in stone and coal, a black signature deep beneath the Earth's crust, a silent testament to a world where life reached for the skies and soared. The Permian period marked a world reshaped and reimagined. After millions of years of slow collision, the scattered continents finally united, locking together into a single, colossal landmass. Pangaea, stretching from pole to pole, was a supercontinent of staggering scale, surrounded by the endless waters of the Panthalassic Ocean. The Earth's face was nearly unrecognizable from the fragmented world that had existed before. Where once lush, steamy swamps had blanketed the land, now vast, arid deserts sprawled across the interior of Pangaea. The immense size of the supercontinent meant that much of its interior lay far from any ocean, starved of moisture and battered by extremes of heat and cold. Monsoons lashed the coasts with seasonal fury, but deep inland, searing droughts and icy winters ruled in harsh succession. Life, ever adaptable, responded to this new, harsher world with remarkable innovations. Synapsids, the distant ancestors of mammals, began to dominate the land. Creatures like Dimetrodon, with its tall, sail-like spine, stalked the river valleys, using its sail perhaps to regulate body temperature or to intimidate rivals and attract mates. Others, like the bulky herbivorous Edaphosaurus, grazed on the tough, fibrous plants that clung to life in the arid soils. The oceans, too, bore witness to dramatic changes. Warm, shallow seas teemed with life along the margins of Pangaea. Ammonites, brachiopods, and coral reefs flourished in the warm waters, creating complex ecosystems. Ancient sharks and armored fish cruised the coasts, hunting in the rich ecosystems that clung to the continental shelves. Life in the seas seemed as vibrant and diverse as ever, unaware of the catastrophe that loomed on the horizon. As the Permian wore on, evolutionary experimentation accelerated. In the deserts roamed creatures like Scutosaurus, a heavily built herbivore armored against predators with thick, bony plates. Strange beasts like Gorgonopsids, saber-toothed predators with long, powerful jaws, ruled the food chain as apex predators. Life on land was becoming increasingly complex and diversified, exploring every available ecological niche with remarkable creativity. But beneath the surface of this thriving world, ominous signs stirred. The climate grew ever more volatile and unpredictable. Massive volcanic eruptions began to tear through the crust, especially in what is now Siberia. The Siberian Traps, one of the largest volcanic provinces in Earth's history, unleashed torrents of lava that spread for millions of square kilometers, releasing staggering amounts of carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, and methane into the atmosphere. The skies darkened with ash and aerosols. Acid rains scorched the land, killing plants and poisoning soils. Oceans grew more acidic and less oxygenated as dissolved gases changed the chemistry of seawater. Global temperatures soared, then plunged, then soared again in wild swings. Ecosystems began to crumble under the weight of relentless environmental stress, unable to adapt fast enough to the rapid changes. Then, approximately 252 million years ago, catastrophe struck. The greatest mass extinction in the history of the planet began, an event so devastating that it would come to be known as the Permian-Triassic extinction event, or simply, the Great Dying. In a span of perhaps 60,000 years, over 90% of marine species and 70% of terrestrial species vanished from the Earth. Coral reefs collapsed completely, their intricate structures dissolving in acidic waters. Forests withered and died, leaving behind barren landscapes. Entire classes of animals disappeared forever from the fossil record. The trilobites, who had survived for hundreds of millions of years through countless challenges, were wiped out completely, their long evolutionary journey ending in extinction. The causes were many and interconnected in a deadly cascade. Massive volcanic activity pumped greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. Runaway greenhouse warming raised temperatures to lethal levels. Ocean acidification dissolved the shells of marine organisms. Anoxia, the loss of oxygen in the oceans, created dead zones where nothing could survive. Perhaps even deadly bursts of methane from the seafloor added to the chaos. It was a perfect storm of disasters, each compounding the effects of the last, creating a planet where survival itself became nearly impossible. For millions of years afterward, Earth was a desolate, barren world. Deserts spread even wider across Pangaea. Life clung on at the margins, small, hardy, and battered. Recovery would be slow and painful, taking millions of years before ecosystems could rebuild themselves. Yet even in the midst of such devastating destruction, the seeds of the future were planted. The survivors, particularly the early archosaurs, ancestors of the future dinosaurs and birds, would rise to dominate the next chapter of Earth's story. These small, resilient creatures had somehow endured when giants fell, and their descendants would inherit a very different world. After the devastation of the Great Dying, the Triassic period dawned on a wounded Earth. The planet was hot, dry, and empty, a barren wasteland where life clung to the edges like stubborn moss on a scorched stone. Forests were sparse and struggling. Oceans were oxygen-starved and lifeless in many regions, and the scars of extinction still marred the landscape. But life, as it always had throughout its long history, found a way forward. In the wake of catastrophe, evolution raced to fill the voids left behind by the vanished species. Survivors of the Permian extinction, small reptiles, amphibians, and early mammal-like synapsids began to diversify. In the oceans, reefs slowly rebuilt themselves, populated by new forms of corals and shelled creatures that had survived the apocalypse. Ammonites, resilient and adaptable, exploded into a dazzling array of shapes and sizes, reclaiming their place as lords of the seas. On land, the reptiles seized the moment with unprecedented success. The harsh conditions favored those that could conserve water and endure extreme temperatures. Among these hardy survivors, the first archosaurs rose, a lineage that would eventually give rise to crocodiles, pterosaurs, and the dinosaurs. The early Triassic landscape was dominated by strange and primitive creatures, unlike anything that exists on Earth today. Lystrosaurus, a pig-sized herbivore with a barrel-shaped body and a horny beak, became incredibly abundant in the early Triassic. It was one of the few large animals to survive the extinction, and for a time it seemed to be everywhere, accounting for perhaps 95% of all land vertebrates. This hardy survivor grazed on the sparse vegetation, its burrows providing shelter from the harsh conditions. Gradually, as millions of years passed, other creatures emerged from the shadows. Cynodonts, advanced mammal-like reptiles with differentiated teeth and more efficient jaws, began to diversify. Some remained small and insect-eating, while others grew larger and became formidable predators. These creatures were warm-blooded or nearly so, with fur covering their bodies, representing an evolutionary path that would eventually lead to true mammals. Over millions of years, as the Triassic unfolded, ecosystems grew more complex and interconnected. Small plant-eating reptiles gave rise to larger armored forms like dinosaurs, moving heavily through the dry woodlands on 4 sturdy legs. Towering above them were the Rauisuchians, fearsome apex predators that stalked the land on powerful legs, their jaws filled with serrated teeth designed for tearing flesh. But amid these strange beasts, a quieter revolution was taking place. In the shadow of the towering Rauisuchians, small, nimble reptiles were evolving. They were bipedal, swift, and light on their feet. They were the first dinosaurs, and though they started small and unassuming, they would eventually inherit the Earth. Dinosaurs began small in the late Triassic. Early forms like Eoraptor and Herrerasaurus darted through the undergrowth, hunting insects and small prey with remarkable agility. Their lightweight skeletons and efficient breathing systems gave them an advantage in the hot, sometimes low-oxygen world of the Triassic. They could run faster, stay active longer, and adapt to niches that their heavier, more sluggish cousins could not exploit. At the same time, the first pterosaurs took to the skies, gliding on leathery wings stretched between elongated fingers. These flying reptiles were not birds, but they filled similar ecological roles, hunting insects and small animals from the air. They represented yet another branch of the archosaur family tree, proof of the incredible evolutionary radiation happening during this period. The climate of the Triassic was generally hot and dry, especially in the vast interior of Pangaea. Monsoons brought seasonal rains to the coasts, but the heart of the supercontinent remained a harsh desert. Plant life adapted to these conditions, with conifers, cycads, and ferns becoming the dominant vegetation. These hardy plants could survive long droughts and quickly take advantage of seasonal rains. In the oceans, life was slowly recovering from the Permian catastrophe. New types of coral began building reefs again, though they were different from the reefs that had existed before. Ichthyosaurs, marine reptiles that resembled dolphins, evolved and diversified, becoming efficient predators in the seas. These creatures had returned to the water after their ancestors had conquered land, showing that evolution could reverse course when conditions favored it. As the Triassic period drew to a close, another extinction event struck, though less severe than the Great Dying. Volcanic activity associated with the breakup of Pangaea released large amounts of carbon dioxide and other gases into the atmosphere. Climate change and ocean acidification followed, and many species disappeared. Notably, many of the large non-dinosaurian archosaurs went extinct, as did many of the mammal-like reptiles. But the dinosaurs survived and thrived. With their main competitors gone, they began to diversify and grow larger. The stage was set for the Jurassic period, when dinosaurs would truly come into their own and dominate terrestrial ecosystems across the globe. The Triassic was a time of recovery and innovation, a bridge between the devastated world of the Permian and the age of giants that would follow. The Jurassic period dawned as Pangaea began to fracture and split apart. The supercontinent that had dominated the Triassic was pulling apart at the seams, driven by the relentless forces of plate tectonics. Rifts opened, and new oceans began to form between the separating land masses. This breakup had profound effects on climate and life, creating new coastlines, new habitats, and new opportunities for evolution to explore. As the continents separated, the climate became more moderate and humid. The harsh deserts of the Triassic interior gave way to lusher, more hospitable environments. Rain fell more regularly across broader regions. Rivers carved through the landscape, creating floodplains and deltas. Vegetation flourished, spreading across the land in thick carpets of green. Forests of conifers, cycads, ginkgos, and ferns covered much of the landscape. These plants provided food for an explosion of herbivorous dinosaurs that grew to remarkable sizes. In this verdant world, the dinosaurs truly came into their own, diversifying into an incredible array of forms that would dominate the land for over 150 million years. The sauropods emerged as the giants of the Jurassic world. These were the largest land animals that have ever lived, with long necks that allowed them to browse vegetation at heights no other animal could reach. Diplodocus stretched to lengths of over 25 meters, its whip-like tail serving as both balance and possibly defense. Its neck, supported by an intricate system of lightweight vertebrae and air sacs, could swing from side to side, allowing it to feed on a wide area without moving its massive body. Brachiosaurus towered above the canopy, its nostrils perched high on its head, breathing the warm, moist air as it browsed from treetops inaccessible to any other creature. It walked with forelimbs longer than its hind limbs, giving it a sloped posture, almost like a giraffe of the Jurassic world. These gentle giants moved in herds across the landscape, their footsteps shaking the ground and leaving deep impressions in the soft earth. But where there were herbivores, predators followed. The theropods, bipedal carnivorous dinosaurs, evolved into fearsome hunters. Allosaurus, one of the apex predators of the late Jurassic, reached lengths of up to 9 meters. With powerful jaws filled with serrated teeth, muscular legs built for running, and sharp claws on its hands and feet, it was a formidable predator, capable of taking down even juvenile sauropods. Apex predators like Allosaurus challenged even the giants, attacking the young, the old, or the weak with coordinated precision. Evidence from fossils suggests they may have hunted in groups, using pack tactics to bring down prey much larger than themselves. They were intelligent for their time, fast, and relentless. In packs, they were the terror of the open plains and forests. The skies above the Jurassic world were ruled by pterosaurs, which had evolved into a spectacular diversity of forms. Some, like Rhamphorhynchus, had long tails ending in diamond-shaped veins that helped with steering and stability during flight. Their jaws were lined with sharp, needle-like teeth, perfect for catching fish, and they spent much of their time soaring over coastal waters and inland lakes. Other pterosaurs grew larger, with wingspans reaching several meters. They soared on thermal currents, their keen eyes scanning the ground below for carrion or small animals. Some had elaborate crests on their heads, which may have been used for display, species recognition, or possibly as rudders during flight. These flying reptiles were masters of the air, filling ecological niches that would later be occupied by birds. But birds themselves were beginning to emerge during the Jurassic period. From small feathered theropod dinosaurs, the first birds evolved. Archaeopteryx, discovered in Jurassic rocks, represents a transitional form caught between two worlds. It had wings covered with feathers like modern birds, but it also bore teeth in its jaws, claws on its wings, and a long bony tail. These early birds fluttered through the canopy, gliding between branches and catching insects. They were evolution's first tentative experiments in powered flight from land-dwelling dinosaurs. While they were not yet as capable flyers as modern birds, they represented an important step in the evolution of flight, showing how dinosaurs would eventually conquer the skies in a different way than their pterosaur cousins. Beneath the waves, the seas teemed with giants and strange creatures. Ichthyosaurs swam like swordfish, sleek and torpedo-shaped, their huge eyes adapted to the dim light of deep waters. Some species grew to lengths of over 15 meters, rivaling modern whales in size. They gave birth to live young in the water, having completely adapted to marine life. Plesiosaurs, with their long necks and barrel-shaped bodies, paddled through the shallows with 4 powerful flippers. Their mouths bristled with needle-sharp teeth, perfect for catching fish and squid. Some plesiosaurs had necks longer than their bodies, giving them an almost serpentine appearance as they glided through the water. These creatures were ambush predators, using their long necks to strike at prey from unexpected angles. Marine crocodiles, quite different from their modern descendants, prowled the coasts and river estuaries. Some had flippers instead of legs and spent their entire lives at sea, while others remained semi-aquatic like modern crocodiles. Turtles evolved during this time, developing their characteristic shells and spreading through both marine and freshwater environments. Ammonites filled the oceans in spectacular diversity, their coiled shells coming in countless shapes, sizes, and patterns. Some glowed with iridescent colors preserved even in fossils. Others grew as large as beach balls, floating through the open ocean. They were cephalopods related to modern squid and nautilus, and they formed an important part of marine food webs. Reefs formed by sponges and corals burst with life in the warm, shallow seas. Crabs, starfish, and ancient squid-like creatures thrived among the complex three-dimensional structures. Sea urchins grazed on algae, while predatory fish hunted through the coral gardens. The oceans were as rich and diverse as the land, teeming with life at every depth. In the Middle Jurassic, as the continents drifted further apart, ocean levels rose dramatically. The climate became even more humid, turning many regions into swampy lowlands and shallow inland seas. Rainforests spread far and wide across the fragmenting land masses. In this verdant world, dinosaur diversity exploded beyond anything that had come before. Ecosystems grew more complex and interconnected. Different species filled specific roles with remarkable precision. Some dinosaurs grazed on low ferns and horsetails, cropping vegetation close to the ground. Others browsed the treetops, their long necks allowing them to access food sources unavailable to other animals. Some scavenged the remains of dead animals, while others specialized in burrowing or even possibly gliding between trees. The evolutionary tree of dinosaurs grew thick with branches, each leading to new forms more specialized than the last. Stegosaurus appeared, with its distinctive double row of plates running down its back and dangerous spikes on its tail. These plates may have served multiple purposes, from thermoregulation to display and species recognition. The tail spikes, known as the thagomizer, were deadly weapons capable of inflicting serious wounds on predators. Ankylosaurs began their evolution during this period, developing heavy armor plating and, in some later species, massive tail clubs that could shatter bone. These living tanks were nearly invulnerable to predators when fully grown, their bodies covered in thick bony plates and spikes that made them difficult targets for even the largest carnivores. By the late Jurassic, The giants ruled without question across vast stretches of land. Brachiosaurus towered above the canopy, its massive body requiring tons of vegetation each day to sustain. It moved slowly but deliberately through the forests, leaving wide trails that other animals would follow. Its sheer size was its defense, as few predators would dare attack a healthy adult. Apatosaurus, formerly known as Brontosaurus, was another massive sauropod that thundered across the Jurassic landscape. These creatures lived in herds, their young protected in the center, while adults formed a defensive perimeter. When threatened, they could rear up on their hind legs, using their massive bodies and powerful tails as weapons capable of crushing or severely injuring attackers. Apex predators like Allosaurus challenged even the giants, attacking the young, the old, or the weak with coordinated precision. They were intelligent for reptiles, fast enough to chase down prey, and relentless in their hunting. In packs, they were the terror of the open plains. Fossil evidence shows Allosaurus bite marks on sauropod bones, proof of the deadly encounters that played out millions of years ago. And among the smaller theropods, new features began to appear that would prove crucial for the future. Feathers, initially evolved for insulation or display, covered the bodies of many small dinosaurs. Hollow bones made them lighter and more agile. Bird-like hips and respiratory systems improved their efficiency. While still grounded, these small creatures were becoming more agile, more intelligent, more adaptable with each passing generation. In their lineage lay the future birds, but in the Jurassic, they were nimble hunters darting between ferns and logs, catching insects and small vertebrates. Some, like Compsognathus, were no larger than chickens, but they were fierce predators in their own right, their sharp teeth and quick reflexes making them successful hunters of lizards and early mammals. The mammals of the Jurassic remained small and largely nocturnal, living in the shadows of the dinosaurs. They were mostly shrew-like creatures, insectivores that scurried through the undergrowth at night when dinosaurs were less active. But within their small bodies, important evolutionary innovations were developing. They had specialized teeth, better hearing, and most importantly, they gave birth to live young and nursed them with milk. These small mammals were biding their time, surviving in niches that dinosaurs largely ignored. They would remain in the shadows for another 100 million years, waiting for their moment to rise. But they were there, persistent and adaptable, ready to seize opportunities when they arose. Plant life during the Jurassic was dominated by gymnosperms, plants that produce seeds without flowers. Conifers formed vast forests, their needle-like leaves adapted to conserve water. Cycads, resembling modern palms but unrelated to them, grew in warm, humid areas. Ginkgos, now represented by a single living species, were common and diverse. Ferns carpeted the forest floors, thriving in the shade of the great trees. But something was stirring in the plant kingdom as well. Toward the end of the Jurassic, the first flowering plants, or angiosperms, began to appear. These early flowers were small and inconspicuous, nothing like the showy blooms we see today. But they represented a revolutionary innovation that would transform terrestrial ecosystems in the period to come. As the Jurassic period neared its end, volcanic activity increased in many parts of the world. The continents continued their slow drift apart, creating new ocean basins and mountain ranges. Climate remained generally warm and humid, but regional variations were increasing as the continents separated and created more diverse environmental conditions. The Jurassic had been an age of giants, a time when dinosaurs reached their maximum sizes and diversity. It was a period of relative stability, with no major extinction events to disrupt the established order. Life flourished in countless forms, from the microscopic to the massive, creating ecosystems of stunning complexity and beauty. The world of the Jurassic was a planet transformed from the barren wasteland of the early Triassic into a lush, vibrant paradise. But the Jurassic was merely setting the stage for what would come next. The Cretaceous period would see even greater diversification, the rise of flowering plants, and ultimately, the reign of some of the most famous dinosaurs ever to walk the Earth. The story was far from over. The Cretaceous period opened as the continents continued their relentless drift apart. South America and Africa separated, creating the South Atlantic Ocean. India broke away from Antarctica, and began its long journey northward toward Asia. Australia and Antarctica remained joined but were pulling away from other landmasses. The world was beginning to take on a more familiar configuration, though still quite different from what we see today. Sea levels rose to their highest point in Earth's history during the Cretaceous. Vast, shallow seas flooded the interiors of continents, creating seaways that split landmasses in two. North America was divided by the Western Interior Seaway, which ran from the Gulf of Mexico to the Arctic Ocean. These inland seas created new marine habitats and isolated populations of terrestrial animals, driving evolution in new directions. The climate was warmer than today, with no permanent ice caps even at the poles. Forests grew in regions that are now frozen tundra. Dinosaurs lived in Antarctica, though during winter months they had to endure several months of darkness. The warm climate meant that tropical and subtropical conditions extended much farther from the equator than they do today. The most significant botanical development of the Cretaceous was the explosive radiation of flowering plants. Angiosperms, which had appeared in a limited way during the late Jurassic, now diversified rapidly and spread across the globe. By the end of the Cretaceous, flowering plants dominated most terrestrial environments, fundamentally changing ecosystems in ways that would prove revolutionary. Flowers evolved in countless forms, colors, and sizes. They formed partnerships with insects, creating co-evolutionary relationships that benefited both. Bees, butterflies, and other pollinators diversified alongside the flowers they pollinated. This created more complex and interconnected ecosystems than had existed in previous periods. The world became more colorful, more diverse, and more productive. The rise of flowering plants had cascading effects throughout ecosystems. Many flowering plants produced fruits and nuts, providing new food sources for animals. Grasses began to evolve, though they would not become dominant until after the dinosaurs were gone. The increased productivity of flowering plants supported larger populations of herbivores, which in turn supported more predators. Herbivorous dinosaurs adapted to take advantage of these new plants. Hadrosaurs, or duck-billed dinosaurs, evolved complex dental batteries with hundreds of tightly packed teeth, capable of grinding tough plant material. These dinosaurs became incredibly abundant in many parts of the world, living in large herds that roamed across floodplains and coastal lowlands. Ceratopsians, the horned dinosaurs, evolved elaborate frills and horns that served both for defense and for display. Triceratops, one of the last and largest ceratopsians, had 3 prominent horns and a massive bony frill that protected its neck. These powerful herbivores could hold their own against even the largest predators, using their horns as deadly weapons when threatened. Ankylosaurs reached their peak during the Cretaceous, with some species developing massive tail clubs that could deliver devastating blows. Their armor was so complete that they were virtually invulnerable from above or the sides, with only their soft underbellies offering any weakness to predators determined enough to try flipping them over. The predators of the Cretaceous evolved to match their increasingly well-defended prey. The tyrannosaurs appeared, culminating in Tyrannosaurus rex, one of the largest terrestrial predators ever to exist. T-Rex stood about 4 meters tall at the hips, measured over 12 meters in length, and weighed as much as 9 tons. Its skull alone was over a meter long, filled with teeth the size of bananas. The bite force of T-Rex was enormous, capable of crushing bone with ease. Its teeth were designed not just to pierce, but to tear through flesh and bone, allowing it to consume its prey entirely, bones and all. Recent research suggests T-Rex may have been more intelligent than previously thought, with a relatively large brain and keen senses, including excellent vision and sense of smell. But T-Rex was not the only apex predator of its time. In South America, Giganotosaurus grew even larger, possibly outweighing T-Rex by a small margin. In North Africa, Spinosaurus developed a massive sail on its back and semi-aquatic adaptations, spending much of its time hunting in rivers and coastal waters for large fish and other aquatic prey. Smaller theropods continued to diversify as well. Velociraptors, made famous by movies but actually only about the size of turkeys, were intelligent pack hunters with a distinctive sickle-shaped claw on each foot. These claws could be used to slash at prey or to grip it, while the dinosaur used its jaws and forelimbs to subdue the victim. Dromaeosaurs, the family to which Velociraptor belonged, were covered in feathers. Many had elaborate plumage that they likely used for display and courtship. Some may have been able to glide or even fly short distances, blurring the line between non-avian dinosaurs and birds even further. Birds themselves were thriving and diversifying during the Cretaceous. They had evolved from small theropod dinosaurs and by this time had developed most of the features we associate with modern birds. Some were fully aquatic, diving for fish in the oceans. Others were terrestrial, running along the ground and catching insects. Still others had adapted to life in the trees, using their wings to move through the forest canopy with agility. The pterosaurs of the Cretaceous reached their maximum sizes and diversity. Quetzalcoatlus, one of the largest flying animals ever to exist, had a wingspan of over 10 meters, roughly equivalent to a small airplane. Despite its enormous size, it was relatively light, with hollow bones and a body that may have weighed only around 200 kilograms. It soared on thermal currents, covering vast distances with minimal effort. These giant pterosaurs were likely terrestrial hunters when not flying, stalking prey on the ground with their long necks and massive beaks. They may have fed on small dinosaurs, large fish, or carrion, using their size to dominate other scavengers. When they took to the air, launching from cliff sides or running across open ground to gain speed, they were a sight that must have been both beautiful and terrifying to behold. Smaller pterosaurs continued to exist alongside their giant cousins, filling different ecological niches. Some had elaborate crests that may have been brightly colored, used for species recognition and courtship displays. Others had specialized beaks for filter feeding, straining small organisms from water like modern flamingos. The diversity of pterosaurs during the Cretaceous was remarkable, showing how successful this body plan had become. The oceans of the Cretaceous were dominated by new groups of marine reptiles. Mosasaurs, massive marine lizards related to modern monitor lizards and snakes, became the apex predators of the seas. Some species grew to lengths of over 15 meters, with powerful jaws and sharp teeth capable of crushing ammonites, sea turtles, and even other marine reptiles. They gave birth to live young in the water and were fully adapted to marine life. Plesiosaurs continued to thrive, with both long-necked and short-necked varieties filling different ecological roles. Elasmosaurus had a neck containing over 70 vertebrae, allowing it to reach into schools of fish and strike with lightning speed. Short-necked pliosaurs like Kronosaurus had massive heads and powerful jaws, making them formidable predators capable of taking down large prey. Sea turtles evolved into forms both familiar and strange. Some, like Archelon, grew to enormous sizes, with shells over 4 meters long. These gentle giants likely fed on jellyfish and other soft-bodied invertebrates, swimming slowly through the warm Cretaceous seas. Other marine turtles remained smaller and more agile, filling niches similar to their modern descendants. Ammonites continued to flourish in incredible diversity, their coiled shells coming in myriad forms. Some were smooth, others ribbed or spiny. Some were tightly coiled, others loosely spiraled. They ranged in size from smaller than a coin to larger than a dinner table. These cephalopods were important members of marine food webs, both as predators of small organisms and as prey for larger animals. New groups of fish evolved during the Cretaceous. Teleosts, the group that includes most modern fish, began their rise to dominance. These fish had more flexible jaws, better swimming abilities, and more efficient respiratory systems than earlier fish groups. They diversified rapidly, filling countless ecological niches and beginning their journey toward becoming the most diverse group of vertebrates on Earth. Sharks continued their slow but steady evolution, developing into many of the forms we recognize today. Some were small and fed on shellfish, crushing their shells with flattened teeth. Others were large predators that hunted marine reptiles and other sharks. The Cretaceous seas were dangerous places, filled with predators at every level of the food chain. The interior seaways that flooded the continents created unique environments, unlike anything that exists today. These shallow seas were warm, productive, and filled with life. Massive schools of fish swam through the waters. Ammonites floated in the currents. Marine reptiles patrolled the depths and surface. And on the shores, dinosaurs came to drink and feed, sometimes falling victim to the aquatic predators that lurked in the shallows. On land, The ecosystems of the Cretaceous reached levels of complexity that rivaled or exceeded anything that exists today. The interactions between plants, herbivores, and predators created intricate food webs. Scavengers cleaned up the remains of dead animals. Parasites and diseases affected populations. Symbiotic relationships developed between different species. Life had become incredibly sophisticated and interconnected. Insects had diversified enormously by the Cretaceous, taking advantage of flowering plants and the opportunities they provided. Ants evolved and began building their complex societies. Termites constructed their mounds and consumed dead wood, recycling nutrients back into the ecosystem. Butterflies and moths co-evolved with flowers, developing long proboscises to reach nectar deep within blooms. Beetles became incredibly diverse, as they are today, with species adapted to nearly every conceivable lifestyle. Some were predators, others herbivores. Some lived in water, others in wood or soil. The evolutionary success of beetles during the Cretaceous laid the foundation for their current status as the most diverse group of animals on Earth, with hundreds of thousands of species. Spiders, scorpions, and other arachnids continued to thrive in terrestrial environments. Spiders in particular diversified greatly, developing many of the web-spinning techniques still used by modern spiders. They were important predators of insects, helping to control populations and maintain ecological balance. In the leaf litter and soil, countless invertebrates worked to break down dead plant matter and recycle nutrients. Meanwhile, the mammals remained mostly small and nocturnal, though they were slowly diversifying into more forms. Marsupials evolved during the Cretaceous, developing their characteristic pouches for carrying young. Placental mammals also appeared, with their more advanced reproductive systems that allowed longer gestation periods. These two groups would go on to dominate the post-dinosaur world, but for now, they remained in the shadows. Some Cretaceous mammals were becoming more specialized. A few grew larger, reaching the size of modern badgers or even larger in some cases. Some became semi-aquatic, hunting for fish and aquatic invertebrates. Others remained arboreal, living in the trees and feeding on insects, fruits, and seeds. They were developing the characteristics that would allow them to rapidly diversify after the dinosaurs disappeared. The climate of the Cretaceous remained warm, but it was not static. There were fluctuations, with some periods being warmer and others slightly cooler. Ocean currents shifted as continents moved. Regional climates became more distinct as land masses separated and created geographical barriers. These changes created selective pressures that drove evolution in new directions. Volcanic activity was common throughout the Cretaceous. Large igneous provinces formed in various parts of the world, releasing enormous amounts of lava and gases. These volcanic events could affect climate on a global scale, causing both warming from greenhouse gases and cooling from ash and aerosols that blocked sunlight. Life had to adapt to these fluctuations or face extinction. In the skies, the sun shone down on a world more vibrant and diverse than any that had come before. Forests of flowering trees and shrubs covered the lowlands. Conifers still dominated in some regions, particularly at higher elevations and latitudes. Ferns carpeted the forest floors. Mosses and liverworts grew on rocks and tree bark. The world was green in countless shades, alive with the buzz of insects and the calls of dinosaurs. Herds of hadrosaurs moved across the landscape, their elaborate crests resonating with calls that echoed through the valleys. Ceratopsians grazed in open areas, their frills and horns making them look like prehistoric rhinoceroses. Sauropods still existed in some parts of the world, though they were less common than they had been during the Jurassic. They continued to be the largest land animals, their long necks reaching high into the trees. Predators stalked through the undergrowth and across open plains. Tyrannosaurs ruled in North America and Asia, their heavy footfalls causing smaller animals to flee in terror. Dromaeosaurs hunted in packs, using intelligence and coordination to bring down prey larger than themselves. Smaller theropods filled roles similar to modern foxes or raccoons, opportunistically feeding on whatever they could catch or scavenge. The world of the late Cretaceous was a paradise of biodiversity. Countless species of dinosaurs, Hundreds of species of pterosaurs and marine reptiles, thousands of species of birds and mammals, and millions of species of insects and other invertebrates. The oceans were rich with life, from the surface to the abyssal depths. Every environment, from polar forests to tropical islands to inland seas, was filled with an abundance of living things. But this paradise was living on borrowed time. Forces were at work that would bring this age to a sudden and catastrophic end. In space, a massive asteroid was on a collision course with Earth, though no living thing on the planet could know or comprehend what was coming. The stage was being set for one of the most dramatic events in Earth's history, an event that would end the reign of the dinosaurs and change the course of evolution forever. For now, though, life continued as it had for millions of years. Dinosaurs hunted and fed, reproduced and raised their young, competed for territory and mates. They were perfectly adapted to their world, masters of their domains, seemingly invincible. They could not know that their time was almost over, that the world they dominated was about to change in ways more dramatic than any volcanic eruption or climate shift had ever caused. The Cretaceous was the culmination of the Mesozoic era, the peak of dinosaur evolution and diversity. It was a time when life on Earth reached heights of complexity and beauty that inspire wonder even today, millions of years after it ended. The fossils we find from this period show us a world alien yet familiar, filled with creatures both fantastic and real. A world that actually existed on this very planet, beneath our feet. 66 million years ago, on what seemed like an ordinary day in the late Cretaceous, the world was about to change forever. The sun rose over forests filled with the calls of dinosaurs and the buzz of insects. Hadrosaurs grazed peacefully in herds along river valleys. Tyrannosaurs prowled the forests, hunting for prey. Pterosaurs soared overhead on leathery wings. In the oceans, mosasaurs and plesiosaurs hunted through the warm waters. Life was thriving, abundant, and seemingly eternal. But high above the atmosphere, invisible to any creature below, a massive asteroid was hurtling toward Earth at incredible speed. This rock from space, approximately 10 to 15 kilometers in diameter, had been on a collision course for millions of years. Now, traveling at over 20 kilometers per second, it was about to strike the planet with the force of billions of nuclear bombs. The asteroid hit in what is now the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico, in an area called Chicxulub. The impact was instantaneous and catastrophic beyond imagination. The asteroid punched through the atmosphere in less than a second, hitting the shallow sea that covered the region. The energy released was equivalent to billions of tons of TNT exploding simultaneously. The asteroid vaporized instantly upon impact, along with a massive volume of rock from the Earth's crust. A crater over 150 kilometers wide was blasted into existence in moments. The force of the impact was so great that it sent shockwaves rippling through the entire planet. Earthquakes far more powerful than any in recorded history shook the ground across all continents. A fireball of superheated rock and gas exploded outward from the impact site, incinerating everything within hundreds or even thousands of kilometers. The heat was so intense that it set forests ablaze across vast regions. Animals were killed instantly by the thermal radiation, their bodies carbonized where they stood. The sky turned orange and red with flames and debris. Massive tsunamis, hundreds of meters high, radiated outward from the impact site. These walls of water crashed into coastlines around the Gulf of Mexico and beyond, sweeping inland for kilometers and destroying everything in their path. Marine life in shallow waters was obliterated. Dinosaurs drinking at the shore were swept away. Entire coastal ecosystems were wiped clean in minutes. But the immediate devastation was only the beginning. The impact ejected billions of tons of vaporized rock, dust, and debris high into the atmosphere. This material spread rapidly around the globe, carried by high-altitude winds. Within hours, the entire planet was shrouded in a thick layer of dust and aerosols that blocked out the sun. Darkness fell across the earth, a darkness that would last for months or possibly years. Without sunlight, photosynthesis stopped. Plants began to die, starting with the smaller, faster-growing species and eventually affecting even the largest trees. The base of the food chain collapsed, and the effects rippled upward through every ecosystem. Temperatures plummeted as the sun's warmth could not reach the surface. The world that had been warm and tropical became cold and dark. Animals that depended on warmth, like the large dinosaurs, began to suffer. Food became scarce as plants died and herbivores starved. Predators, having nothing to hunt, faced starvation as well. Acid rain fell from the sky as the impact had vaporized rocks rich in sulfur. This acid rain poisoned lakes, rivers, and oceans, killing fish and other aquatic life. The pH of the oceans dropped dramatically, causing widespread death of marine organisms, particularly those with calcium carbonate shells like ammonites and many species of plankton. Wildfires raged across the continents, ignited both by the initial thermal pulse and by debris falling back to Earth. Vast forests that had taken millions of years to develop burned in weeks. The smoke from these fires added to the darkness, creating a toxic atmosphere that was difficult to breathe and impossible to see through. In this hellish environment, the dinosaurs began to die. The large herbivores, needing enormous amounts of food each day, were among the first to succumb. Without plants to eat, they starved within weeks. Their massive bodies, once their greatest advantage, became liabilities in a world without food. Herds of hadrosaurs and ceratopsians that had numbered in the thousands collapsed and died. The large predators followed soon after. With no prey to hunt, tyrannosaurs and other large theropods had nothing to eat. Some may have turned to scavenging, feeding on the carcasses that littered the landscape, but this was only a temporary solution. As the bodies were consumed or rotted away, the predators too faced starvation. The pterosaurs, masters of the skies for over 150 million years, fell from the air. Unable to find food and possibly unable to fly in the altered atmospheric conditions, these magnificent creatures became extinct. Every species of pterosaur, from the smallest to the massive Quetzalcoatlus, disappeared from the earth forever. In the oceans, the devastation was equally complete. Marine reptiles like mosasaurs and plesiosaurs, having survived multiple smaller extinction events, could not survive this one. The collapse of marine food chains, caused by the death of plankton and other primary producers, meant there was nothing for them to eat. The ammonites, which had flourished for hundreds of millions of years, went completely extinct. Not a single species survived. The death toll was staggering. Approximately 75% of all species on Earth went extinct. On land, every dinosaur larger than a small dog disappeared. In the seas, most large marine reptiles vanished. In the skies, all pterosaurs were gone. The world that had been dominated by these creatures for over 160 million years had ended in what, geologically speaking, was an instant. But not everything died. Some creatures survived, and their survival would shape the future of life on Earth. Small mammals, which had remained in the background during the age of dinosaurs, found themselves in a world with far fewer predators and competitors. Their small size, which had been a limitation, now became an advantage. They needed less food and could hide in burrows or hollow trees, protecting themselves from the harsh conditions. Birds, which were technically a lineage of dinosaurs themselves, also survived. Not all bird species made it through, but enough did to repopulate the skies in the aftermath. Their ability to fly allowed them to search for food across wide areas. Their relatively small size meant they needed less food than larger animals. And some species may have been able to enter torpor, a state of reduced metabolism, helping them survive periods when food was scarce. Crocodilians, which had existed alongside dinosaurs, survived as well. Their semi-aquatic lifestyle may have helped, as aquatic ecosystems recovered somewhat faster than terrestrial ones. Their ability to go long periods without food, a characteristic of modern crocodiles, probably helped them endure the lean times following the impact. Turtles and tortoises also survived the extinction event. Their slow metabolism and ability to hibernate or estivate allowed them to wait out the worst conditions. Some aquatic turtles could survive in reduced oxygen environments that would kill other animals. Snakes and lizards, being small and requiring relatively little food, managed to persist through the catastrophe. Many groups of fish survived, particularly those living in freshwater environments. Rivers and lakes, while affected by the extinction event, maintained some productivity even during the worst times. This allowed fish populations to persist and eventually recover. In the oceans, sharks survived, as they had through previous extinction events, proving once again to be remarkably resilient. Insects, with their small size and short generation times, were able to survive in large numbers. While many species went extinct, enough survived to maintain ecological functions like pollination and decomposition. Their ability to enter dormancy and their diverse diets helped them endure the changed conditions. Plants showed varied responses to the extinction event. Many large, long-lived trees died, but their seeds often survived in the soil. Fast-growing plants like ferns were among the first to recolonize devastated areas, creating a fern spike visible in the fossil record. These pioneer species helped stabilize soils and began the process of rebuilding ecosystems. Flowering plants, which had become dominant during the Cretaceous, suffered heavy losses but survived as a group. Their seeds could remain dormant in the soil for long periods, waiting for conditions to improve. Once sunlight returned and temperatures stabilized, these seeds germinated and began the slow process of recovering plant diversity. The recovery period following the extinction was long and difficult. It took thousands of years for the dust to settle and sunlight to fully return. It took tens of thousands of years for plant communities to recover to something resembling their pre-impact diversity. And it took millions of years for ecosystems to fully rebuild, and for new groups of large animals to evolve and fill the niches left empty by the dinosaurs. The world that emerged from this catastrophe was fundamentally different from the one that had existed before. The age of reptiles was over. The age of mammals was beginning. The creatures that had once cowered in the shadows of dinosaurs were now free to explore, evolve, and eventually dominate the planet in ways that would have been impossible while dinosaurs ruled. In the centuries and millennia following the impact, survivors spread across the devastated landscape. Mammals, no longer constrained by dinosaur predators and competitors, began to diversify. Small insectivores gave rise to larger forms. New ecological roles were filled by creatures that evolved with remarkable speed. Within 10 million years, mammals had evolved forms ranging from tiny shrews to animals the size of modern bears. The extinction of the dinosaurs was a tragedy of almost incomprehensible scale. Creatures that had dominated the Earth for over 160 million years, that had evolved into thousands of species adapted to every imaginable environment, were wiped out in what may have been less than a year of catastrophic conditions following the impact. The loss of biodiversity was staggering, and the world would never be quite the same. Yet from this tragedy came opportunity. The survivors inherited a world with vast, empty niches waiting to be filled. Evolution, given this blank canvas, would paint new masterpieces. Mammals would evolve into whales, bats, primates, and eventually, humans. Birds would diversify into thousands of species, from tiny hummingbirds to massive ostriches. The Earth would recover, and life would flourish once again, different, but no less magnificent than what had come before. The story of Earth from 600 million years ago to 66 million years ago is a story of transformation, innovation, and resilience. It began in a world where life existed only in the oceans, where soft-bodied creatures drifted in ancient seas without eyes to see or minds to comprehend their existence. It was a world of silence and simplicity, where survival meant merely existing in harmony with the surrounding environment. Then came the Cambrian explosion, a burst of evolutionary creativity that introduced complexity, predation, and competition. Life suddenly became a struggle, an arms race between predator and prey that drove the development of shells, spines, eyes, and mobility. The oceans filled with an incredible diversity of forms, many of which would leave no descendants. Evolutionary experiments that ended in extinction. The conquest of land was perhaps the most significant transition in this long story. What began with simple moss-like plants clinging to rocks grew into vast forests that transformed the atmosphere and climate of the entire planet. Arthropods ventured onto shore, followed eventually by vertebrates that developed legs, lungs, and the ability to reproduce away from water. The barren continents that had existed for billions of years became green with life. The Carboniferous forests created an oxygen-rich world where insects grew to enormous sizes, and the first reptiles evolved independence from water. The coal they left behind would one day power human civilization, an unintended legacy of an ancient world. The formation of Pangaea brought all continents together, creating new opportunities and new challenges for life. The Permian period ended with the greatest catastrophe in Earth's history up to that point. The Great Dying wiped out the vast majority of species, coming closer to ending all complex life than any event before or since. Yet life endured, and from the ashes of that devastation arose new forms. The archosaurs emerged from the shadows, and from them came the dinosaurs, creatures that would dominate the planet for over 160 million years. The age of dinosaurs was an era of giants and wonders. Sauropods that shook the ground with each step, tyrannosaurs with jaws powerful enough to crush bone, pterosaurs with wingspans rivaling small aircraft, marine reptiles that ruled the oceans. These creatures were perfectly adapted to their world, products of millions of years of evolution. They filled every ecological niche on land, in the air, and in the seas. But perfection and dominance offered no protection against a catastrophe from space. The asteroid that struck 66 million years ago ended the reign of the dinosaurs as surely and suddenly as a light being switched off. In the aftermath, the world was left to smaller creatures that had lived in the shadows, creatures that would evolve to fill the empty niches and eventually give rise to the diversity of life we see today. This long history teaches us several profound lessons. First, that life is incredibly resilient. No matter how devastating the catastrophe, no matter how complete the destruction seems, life finds a way to survive and eventually flourish again. From the Great Dying to the asteroid impact, survivors emerged and rebuilt the living world. Second, that dominance is temporary. The trilobites dominated the seas for hundreds of millions of years, yet they are gone. The dinosaurs ruled the land for over 160 million years, yet they too disappeared except for their bird descendants. Every group that has ever dominated Earth has eventually declined or gone extinct. Nothing lasts forever in the story of life. Third, that opportunity often comes from catastrophe. The survivors of extinction events inherit a world with reduced competition. They can evolve rapidly to fill empty niches, radiating into new forms with remarkable speed. The mammals that survived the asteroid impact were small and insignificant during the age of dinosaurs, but they became the dominant large animals of the Cenozoic. Fourth, that Earth itself is dynamic and ever-changing. Continents move, climates shift, sea levels rise and fall. Life must constantly adapt to these changes or face extinction. The species that are successful are those that can evolve quickly enough to match the pace of environmental change. And finally, that we are part of this long story. Every human being is descended from the survivors of multiple mass extinctions. Our distant ancestors were fish that crawled onto land. Before that, they were simple chordates swimming in Cambrian seas. Before that, they were even simpler creatures whose fossils we may never find. We carry within our DNA the legacy of billions of years of evolution. The period from 600 million years ago to 66 million years ago saw Earth transform from a planet of barren continents and simple marine life to a world filled with complex ecosystems, towering forests, and creatures of incredible diversity. It was a time that included both the greatest flourishing and the greatest catastrophes in life's history. It set the stage for everything that would follow, including the eventual rise of mammals, and ultimately, human civilization. The story of life on Earth is one of constant change. Species evolve, flourish for a time, and eventually go extinct or evolve into something else. Ecosystems assemble, reach stability, and then are disrupted by climate change, continental drift, or catastrophe. Yet through all these changes, life persists. The total biomass and biodiversity of Earth has generally increased over time, despite periodic setbacks from extinction events. Looking back across these hundreds of millions of years, patterns emerge. Evolution is not a ladder leading to ever more perfect forms, but a branching tree with countless dead ends. Most species that have ever existed are now extinct. Most evolutionary experiments have failed, but the failures are just as important as the successes, because they explored possibilities and sometimes paved the way for later innovations. Convergent evolution shows us that similar environmental pressures produce similar solutions. The streamlined body shape of ichthyosaurs, fish, and dolphins evolved independently because it is efficient for moving through water. The wings of pterosaurs, birds, and bats evolved separately because flight offers tremendous advantages. These similarities tell us that evolution is not random, but is constrained and directed by the laws of physics and the demands of survival. Coevolution between species creates intricate relationships. Flowering plants and their pollinators evolve together, each influencing the other's evolution. Predators and prey engage in evolutionary arms races, each adapting to overcome the other's defenses or attacks. Parasites and hosts, competitors and mutualists, all influence each other's evolution in complex ways. Life does not evolve in isolation, but in the context of communities and ecosystems. The history we have explored, from the Ediacaran to the end of the Cretaceous, spans over 500 million years. To put this in perspective, the entire history of human civilization, from the first cities to the present day, is only about 10,000 years. The dinosaurs ruled for over 16,000 times longer than humans have had civilization. The trilobites existed for far longer than the dinosaurs. Deep time is almost incomprehensibly vast. Yet even this immense span, from 600 to 66 million years ago, represents only a fraction of Earth's total history. The planet is about 4.5 billion years old. Life appears to have originated nearly 4 billion years ago, though the earliest life was microscopic and simple. For most of Earth's history, life consisted only of single-celled organisms. The complex, multicellular life we have been discussing is a relatively recent development in geological terms. The Cambrian explosion, that burst of diversity about 540 million years ago, came after billions of years of simpler life. All the wonders of the Paleozoic, Mesozoic, and Cenozoic eras, all the creatures that have walked, flown, or swum through Earth's ecosystems, emerged from that foundation of microscopic life that had been evolving for eons. We are inheritors of an incredibly ancient lineage. The world today is vastly different from the world of the Cretaceous or the Cambrian. The continents are in different positions. The climate is different. The dominant organisms are different. But the fundamental processes remain the same. Evolution continues to shape life. Species still adapt to their environments or go extinct. Ecosystems still assemble and change. The story continues, and we are now part of it. Humans have existed as a species for only about 300,000 years, and modern human civilization for only 10,000. We are newcomers to this ancient planet. the latest chapter in a very long book. Yet we have had an outsized impact, changing the planet's surface, atmosphere, and ecosystems at a pace that rivals some of the most dramatic events in geological history. We are now a geological force ourselves. The study of deep time and ancient life provides perspective. It shows us that Earth has been through dramatic changes before and has recovered. It shows us that species go extinct, that dominance is temporary, that catastrophes happen. It also shows us the incredible resilience and creativity of life, the way evolution can produce solutions to problems and fill empty niches with astonishing forms. But this history also contains warnings. Mass extinctions have happened before, and they are devastating. Recovery takes millions of years. The species that go extinct are lost forever, their unique evolutionary paths ended. The complexity and beauty that took millions of years to evolve can be destroyed in geological instants. These lessons are relevant as we face our own environmental challenges. The rocks beneath our feet contain the history of our planet and the story of life itself. Every mountain, every valley, every rock formation is a page in this vast book. Learning to read this book, to understand what the rocks and fossils tell us, is one of humanity's great intellectual achievements. It has allowed us to reconstruct events that happened millions of years before humans existed, and to understand our place in the grand story of life. Standing at the end of the Cretaceous, looking back across the vast expanse of time we have traversed, we can see the arc of life's history. From simple beginnings in ancient seas, life spread across the planet, adapted to every environment, evolved into countless forms both familiar and alien. It survived catastrophes that wiped out the majority of species. It rebuilt after devastation. It pushed into new frontiers, from the deepest oceans to the highest mountains to the open skies. The creatures we have met in this journey, from the ghostly Ediacaran organisms to the mighty Tyrannosaurus rex, were all real. They lived, they struggled, they succeeded for a time. Their fossils are their legacy, proof that they existed and evidence of what they were like. Through the patient work of paleontologists, we can know something of their lives, understand their world, and appreciate their place in the story of life. As we close this chapter of Earth's history and the curtain falls on the age of dinosaurs, we stand at a threshold. The asteroid impact that ended the Cretaceous was not the end of the story, but rather a dramatic turning point. From the ashes and darkness of that catastrophe, new forms of life would emerge. Mammals would diversify and grow large, filling the niches left empty by the dinosaurs. Birds would flourish in unprecedented diversity. The world would be rebuilt once again, different, but no less magnificent. The Paleogene and Neogene periods that followed would see the rise of grasses, the evolution of horses, elephants, whales, and countless other mammals. Primates would evolve, and from them would come apes, and from apes would come humans. The story continues forward from that impact 66 million years ago, through countless more changes and adaptations, leading eventually to us and the world we know today. But that is a story for another time. Our journey has taken us from the Ediacaran seas, through the Cambrian explosion, across the greening of the land, through forests of giant trees and oxygen-rich air, across the supercontinent of Pangaea, through the age of dinosaurs in all its glory, to the catastrophic end of the Cretaceous. We have witnessed life's greatest innovations and most devastating setbacks. We have seen evolution at work across hundreds of millions of years. The deep past is a foreign country, yet it is our heritage. Every living thing on Earth today, from bacteria to blue whales, from ferns to redwood trees, from fungi to humans, shares common ancestors with the creatures we have met on this journey. We are connected to them through an unbroken chain of descent stretching back through deep time. Their struggles were not in vain, because their descendants persist. We exist because they survived. As you go about your daily life, remember that you are walking on ancient ground. The rocks beneath your feet may contain fossils of creatures that lived millions of years ago. The atoms in your body were once part of ancient seas, ancient forests, perhaps even ancient dinosaurs, recycled through countless generations of life and death. You are made of stardust and ancient earth, a temporary assemblage of matter that has been part of this planet for billions of years and will remain long after you are gone. The story of prehistoric Earth, from 600 million years ago to 66 million years ago, is a testament to the power of time, the creativity of evolution, and the resilience of life. It is a story of beginnings and endings, of triumphs and tragedies, of creatures great and small who lived their lives under alien skies on a planet that was familiar yet strange. It is our story too, for we are part of this same grand narrative, the latest chapter in an epic that has been unfolding for billions of years. And so we close this window into deep time, having glimpsed a world that no human eye ever saw, but that science has allowed us to reconstruct and understand. The dinosaurs are gone. The trilobites are gone. The ancient seas have drained away or been transformed, but their legacy remains in the rocks, in the fossils, in the DNA of living things, and in the shape of the world itself. They were here. They mattered. And now you know their story. Thank you for joining this journey through deep time, for walking alongside creatures that have been extinct for millions of years, for imagining worlds that existed long before humans and will continue long after we are gone. May this story give you perspective on the present, appreciation for the past, and hope for the future. The story of life continues, and in some small way, we all contribute to its next chapters. The ancient earth calls to us across the vast gulf of time, whispering its secrets through stone and bone. Listen carefully, and you can still hear the echo of footsteps that shook the ground millions of years ago, the splash of marine reptiles in ancient seas, the rustle of wings in Jurassic forests. The past is not truly gone. It lives on in the rocks beneath our feet, in the shapes of continents, in the chemistry of the atmosphere, and in every living thing that carries within it the genetic legacy of billions of years of evolution. Farewell, ancient Earth. Farewell, creatures of the deep past. Your world is gone, but you are not forgotten. Through science and imagination, we remember you, we honor you, and we learn from you. Your story is our story, and it will continue to inspire wonder and curiosity for as long as humans walk this earth and look back across the immense expanse of time that separates us from you. Rest well in the stone, and know that you are remembered. When we look at fossils from these ancient times, we are looking at real creatures that lived, breathed, reproduced, and died on this very planet. They walked on ground that is now buried deep beneath sediments or thrust up into mountain ranges. They swam in seas that have long since drained away or been uplifted into dry land. They lived under skies that saw different stars than we see today, as the solar system has moved through the galaxy over millions of years. These creatures were not merely primitive versions of modern animals. They were sophisticated, complex organisms perfectly adapted to their environments. The idea that ancient life was somehow inferior or less evolved is a misconception. A Tyrannosaurus rex was just as evolved as any modern animal, having undergone just as many generations of natural selection. It was simply adapted to a different world. The preservation of fossils is itself somewhat miraculous. Most organisms that have ever lived left no trace of their existence. They died and decayed completely, their bodies recycled by scavengers and decomposers. Only under special circumstances, when an organism is rapidly buried in sediment and protected from decay, can fossilization occur. And even then, the rock containing the fossil must survive for millions of years without being destroyed by erosion or metamorphism. Because fossilization is so rare, the fossil record is incomplete. We have samples of ancient life, snapshots of particular moments and places, but vast gaps remain. There are certainly many species that existed but left no fossils we have yet found, and many we will never find, because the rocks that contained them have been destroyed. Despite these limitations, the fossil record provides a remarkable window into deep time. The rocks themselves tell stories beyond just the fossils they contain. Layers of sediment reveal ancient environments, sand deposited by rivers, mud from lakes, limestone from shallow seas, coal from swamps. Each type of rock indicates what the landscape looked like millions of years ago. By studying the rocks and the fossils together, scientists can reconstruct entire ecosystems and understand how they changed over time. Geologists can also determine when rocks formed using various dating techniques. Radiometric dating measures the decay of radioactive elements in rocks, providing ages that can be accurate to within a few million years for very old rocks. This allows us to construct a timeline of Earth's history, placing events in order and understanding the duration of different periods. The geological timescale, divided into eons, eras, periods, and epochs, is based on changes in the fossil record. Major boundaries, like the one between the Permian and Triassic, or the Cretaceous and Paleogene, correspond to mass extinction events or other significant changes in life. This timescale provides a framework for understanding Earth's history and comparing events that happened millions of years apart. Climate proxies preserved in rocks allow scientists to reconstruct ancient climates. Oxygen isotopes in fossils reveal ocean temperatures. Plant fossils indicate rainfall and seasonality. The presence or absence of certain rock types can indicate whether regions were tropical, temperate, or polar. Through these indirect measures, we can understand what weather and climate were like in the distant past. Plate tectonics, the movement of Earth's crustal plates, has shaped the planet throughout its history. The opening and closing of oceans, the collision of continents, the rise of mountain ranges, all of these geological processes have profoundly affected life. When continents come together, species from different regions encounter each other, leading to competition and extinction. When continents separate, populations become isolated and evolve in different directions. The atmosphere has changed dramatically over Earth's history. The rise of oxygen from cyanobacteria fundamentally altered the planet. The fluctuations in carbon dioxide levels have driven climate changes. The development of the ozone layer made it possible for life to exist on land without being killed by ultraviolet radiation. These atmospheric changes were often driven by life itself, showing how organisms can alter the entire planet. The oceans have also changed over time. Their chemistry, temperature, and circulation patterns have varied. At times, they have been warm from pole to pole, with no ice anywhere on Earth. At other times, ice sheets have extended far from the poles, locking up water and lowering sea levels. These changes affected marine life and influenced evolution in countless ways. Volcanic activity has episodically caused mass extinctions or near extinctions. Large igneous provinces, where vast amounts of lava erupt over relatively short geological periods, have coincided with several extinction events. The gases released by these eruptions can change climate and ocean chemistry rapidly, faster than most species can adapt. Yet even these catastrophes have eventually passed, and life has recovered. The story of life on Earth is one of constant change. Species evolve, flourish for a time, and eventually go extinct or evolve into something else. Ecosystems assemble, reach stability, and then are disrupted by climate change, continental drift, or catastrophe. Yet through all these changes, life persists. The total biomass and biodiversity of Earth has generally increased over time, despite periodic setbacks from extinction events.